Well, hey everyone, I'm KOIN senior meteorologist here with a fun topic today. We're going to talk about what everyone wants to know, the upcoming snow season here in Portland. What does our winter 2025 to 2026 look like? And today I've got a special guest with me, our very own Steve Pierce, meteorologist that you
Yay.
see on TV the weekends a lot. Sometimes he's covering me in the mornings too.
Oh yeah.
How's it going? How you feeling?
I'm feeling like we got a little bit of La Nina brewing out there, so
Yeah.
we'll see what we can whip up for the winter weather.
Yeah, La Nina. I feel like we say La Nina, El Nino, Enzo so much. What exactly does that mean? What
Yeah.
exactly or how exactly does that influence our weather here around the area? Can you give us a little bit of background of all that?
Layman's terms, we refer to it as ENSO or El Nino Southern Oscillation. It's an index based on sea surface temperatures in the tropics. Specifically, as you see there on your graphic, it is sea surface temperatures right along the equator. And as your graphic says, we are right now cooler than average. And by that, I mean if the sea surface temperature goes up and down each season by, say, even 1 degree Celsius, so a little more than a degree Fahrenheit, that's actually quite substantial because it alters the jet stream throughout the winter months in the northern hemisphere. And it oscillates back and forth about once every 5 years on average. So we go from neutral to warmer than normal. Yeah, that's a that's a perfect um, representation of what a La
Yeah.
Nina pattern looks like. And there you go. There's just a better chance for Arctic air to slip south of the border with a more active polar jet stream. And that ridge of high pressure is typically set up a little closer to the Gulf of Alaska during a La Nina winter, as opposed to just off our coast in, say, an El Nino year where we'd be very high and dry. So
Hmm.
that's kind of it in a nutshell. And it just kind of goes, it oscillates or undulates back and forth each
Yeah.
season. We start to see it about 6 months, 5 months, four
Yeah.
months in
I
advance.
think it's so cool how we're looking at ocean temperatures, like we're observing ocean water, and that has an impact on our atmosphere. And
Yep.
these Enzo or La Ninas and El Ninos, they often mostly impact the winter weather, not so much other seasons, right? We tend to see the most influence
Correct.
and changes come the winter months.
Yeah, it has a lot to do. We start to see the signals start to show up usually in about May or June, sometimes as late as July or even early August before we can really tell where we're going with sea surface temperatures for the next winter. And a lot, when I say it impacts a jet stream, it has more to do with the amount of activity or tropical activity and energy, so to speak, along the equator, which that then alternates the jet stream. But yeah, they usually set in. We can see them by summertime, and that portends sort of what's going to happen, say, 6 months later in the
Yeah.
wintertime.
So this year we've got a weaker La Nina setting up, which
Yeah.
is kind of similar to last year's pattern, you could say. I've got a list here of recent winter snowfall in Portland and the types of Enzo patterns we've had. So our most recent winter was a weak La Nina, and we saw 3 inches of snow. The one
Yep.
before that was a strong El Nino, only 1.6 inches of snow. And then we had 3 consecutive La Nina winters, all with
Yeah.
above average snow in Portland,
Yep.
which kind of proves the trend true that we
Yep.
tend to get more snow around the Pacific Northwest, the mountains, and in the city, in La Nina winters. So
Yeah.
these are, important patterns that forecasters like to track just to get a little bit of an idea of what we might see this winter and to form that outlook.
Boy, and I tell you, these numbers are really representative. At least to me, what stands out are those even weak La Ninas or moderate La Ninas, 11 inches, 6 inches, 10 inches, as opposed to an El Nino, just 1.6 inches. Now, keeping in mind, that's the entire winter of, say, 23, 24, just 1.6 inches. And then neutral years, that 2019, 2020 Boy, it actually, I remember that one, and it really acted more like an El Nino, in my opinion,
Hmm.
than it did neutral. Because neutral years, of course, for anyone who's watching, is the absence of either El Nino, warmer than normal ocean water temperatures in the tropics, or La Nina, cooler than normal. So basically, right at normal. I didn't coin the phrase, but I like to use it, La Nada. You
Ah,
know,
I've never heard that.
oh, you haven't? Yeah.
No.
El Nino, La Nina, La Nada.
Lanada.
Absence of
I
either.
I dig it. I really like that.
La Nada. So yeah. Uh, and if you were to take a graphic like this and extrapolate more data from, say, the Snowtel website up on Mount Hood at Mount Hood Meadows, or maybe say Government Camp, you're really going to see a difference in these La Nina winters.
Hmm.
La Nina winters don't necessarily guarantee Portland a
Right.
snow event or a big Arctic blast. It definitely increases the odds, but it's really noticeable in the Cascade
The
Mountains
Cascades.
and
I
bigger
mean,
snow years. Yeah,
yeah, I was just looking at I crunched so many numbers when I was building my winter outlook, and just looking at Mount Hood Meadows data, that's at
yeah,
5,000 feet up on Mount Hood. That ski resort, on average, they see about 460 inches of snow or
yep,
430 inches of snow per season. But La Nina years, it is, maybe 2 feet more snowfall. You can really tell the influence. And some El Nino winters, it is just a poor
yeah,
season. And not saying
yeah.
you can't get poor seasons in La Nina winters either, but that influence really shows, especially in those higher elevated, snowy, mountainous areas in the Pacific Northwest.
Boy, I remember I believe it was 2014, 2015, the first year I came to KOIN. That was an El Nino, and it was, oh, I mean, the ski resorts didn't even open, I think, until about
Oh,
MLK weekend in second week in
oh,
January. Yeah,
geez.
El Nino is big ridge of high pressure over the Pacific Northwest, and all we do is sit in the
A very
I call it
dry.
split pea soup. Yeah,
Yeah.
fog, clouds in the valley, but it's beautiful at the coast and the Cascades and those El Nino where we get the temperature inversion.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't expect a lot of that this winter.
No, it's a good bet if you are a skier that you should get your pass. Probably a
Yeah.
pretty good year. But you know what? We're kind of all excited about Portland snow. So
Mhm.
I've got another graphic here. This is data from 1970 to last winter in Portland.
Yeah.
And you can see all the La Nina winters we've had above average snow. The average is 4.5 inches for this about 55-year period. And El Nino winters, yeah, the trend seems to be a little bit lower than average.
Yep, and that's been like that. If you took this data back all the way, say, to 1950, that's about the time they started really tracking El Nino, La Nina. Or we can get data from
Yeah.
back then, even though we didn't start doing it until the late 80s, early 90s. You'd see the same thing. In fact, I would argue there would be even a bigger differential between the El Nino and the La Nina winters, just because of the way kind of things have gone with seasonal snowfall, say in Portland, when you look each decade. And I think, not
Check
to
out this
jump ahead, but
graphic.
oh, there it is.
I think this is so interesting. Average
Yeah,
snow per year by
yeah,
the decades. And you
yeah,
can clearly see the differences and the decrease in the amount of snow just
yeah,
in the last 50 years or so.
yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
quite the change. I mean, you weren't around in the 50s, Steve, but maybe
oh,
your
what?
parents were. Yeah,
That's true. That's true.
average per year about 9 to 10 inches
Yep,
in a winter.
yep.
Like expecting that. We're at about half that now, less than
Yeah.
that. So
So interesting because I do want to talk about this. My family's been in the Vancouver area, Washington, since the World War II, when we kind of all migrated out here. Both sides of my family did from different parts of the country during World War II. And yeah, that's kind of back in that 1940 to 1950 bar there in the beginning.
mhm.
I think what I find this graphic very interesting because I've seen different versions of this before. And notice how we've kind of leveled out since what's that, 1980-ish on average. Now that
Right.
means there can be very, very dry years, no snow at all, and versus others where there's a little bit each
Yeah.
each winter. Um, Two things. One, that's a sign of a changing climate, obviously, and number two, also a law. We our population out here in the Portland, Vancouver area has since 1950 has quadrupled, four times higher. So you do have a little bit of that urban heat island effect. And the reason why I make this mention or this note is the Portland airport's been at its current location since about 1938, 39, right in there. And then records start around 1940. And so as the city has grown around the airport, the observations have been consistent with their location. So it's a good sample to look at when it comes to sort of
Hmm.
urban growth, urban heat island, all that. Another thing that I want to say, even though it's not in this graphic, we have now had, if I've done the math right, 10 winters as of last winter. Maybe it was nine last winter in a row of measurable snowfall in Portland. And that I I looked at it last year. I don't think that's happened in our lifetime, like in
Hmm.
modern times. You have to go back to I want to say it was back in the 30s and early 40s before we had 10 consecutive winters of measurable snowfall in Portland. Now, granted,
Yeah.
some of those years are itty bitty, point 0.5, that 19 or 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
It's measurable still. So that's an interesting sort of bell curve, and I think that plays in more to the PDO, which we're not really getting into the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Yeah, there you go, right
There,
there.
yeah, you are right, Steve. Last, what, 10 years in Portland
Yep,
have
yep,
all seen measurable snow. And I've been doing this uh, observation, outlook, and analysis for the last 6 or 7 years now. And I
okay,
remember, 2 or 3 years in, that was the first time that we had 3 years in a row of consecutive
yep,
snow, and now it's up
yep,
to this many, 10.
yep,
So
yep,
yeah, I think there are other atmospheric factors like the PDO, which is the
yep,
Pacific Decadal Oscillation, another large scale global
yep,
shift of temperatures and air masses and
yep,
energy. But we're not going to
yep.
get into that.
Nope.
This at least in this
That's
conversation
next
here.
week. That's
That's
next
next
week.
week. Yeah, we'll get into the weeds there. But yeah, just talking about La Nina,
Yeah.
it does bring a good bet that we will see a little more snow maybe
Yep.
than average. Doesn't mean we will get it, but the odds are stacked in our favor. Do you want to share
Yep.
this graphic here? I don't know if it's hard to read, but this is just looking at the monthly snow. So
Yeah.
kind of spacing out the winter and what months we tend to see the most action.
Yeah, and that is yeah, blue versus gray. I can see it. Yeah, it is a little smaller, but I can see it. So we're looking at December, January, and February. This graphic, what I find very interesting about this is and this is in La Ninas, correct?
This
If
is
I remember
just La Nina versus normal snow.
correct.
Yes.
Notice how it tends to be higher in December and February, but slightly lower in January. I didn't see this graphic until you created it. I didn't know what I was going to see on this one. But that is very interesting because I think this has a lot to do with a position of the jet stream early on in the season in a La Nina or slightly La Nina versus a position of the jet stream once you get, say, into the meat or the heart of winter
Hmm.
in January. That's very interesting.
I know. I can't figure out why that's been the trend. I believe this
Yeah.
is 23 years
Oh,
of
okay.
La Ninas, all in the blue, and then I mean this is data since 1970, so about
Yeah.
55 years for the gray bars.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean we really see that high pressure kind of shifting up, and it's been driving in more storms, so that odd for snowfall in December kind of upticks. But maybe there's
Yep.
some changes getting into January before it upticks
Yep.
again in February. Yeah, it's
Yep.
hard to say, but
I think it's all positioning of the jet stream early on in the winter months. We tend to get to say first or second week of December. We get into our first little Arctic intrusion or ability to
yeah.
draw some of that cold continental air through the gorge, and then yeah, the pattern just I've noticed snow patterns in Portland tend to take about 30 days to cycle through.
Hmm.
So if we get a shot at snow and the right setup, we get the cold air dumping down from the north, some precip in off the coast. It'll take about 30 to 45 days to kind of work through that cycle again. We'll go into a different pattern. That would put us, say, into January. And then all of a sudden we see in these La Nina winters, we'll repeat the cycle again. 45 days later, now you're looking at, you're into a little bit of February.
Hmm.
So that's always been my theory. I
Hmm.
don't think I have a whole lot of data to back that up with, but patterns go in cycles and we kind of phase into one, phase out, of that one and into another one. So yeah, I thought I was really fascinated by that one. I would not have thought that's what the numbers would show.
Hmm. I do feel like in recent years, the last 5 or 6 years, the majority of our winters have been La Ninas, and we have seen some really big snow events in February.
Yeah.
And looking at last year, we had snow only in the month of February. It wasn't a very big storm. It was still enough to break down the city and cause some delays and schools to go out for about a couple of days. And we
Oh
also
yeah.
had just little sheet of ice also in there,
Yep.
in between. It was like it was right around Valentine's Day
Yeah.
that
Yep. I
happened.
remember it well. Funny, that's the
Yeah.
it was was there a Valentine's Day? Oh, I'm thinking of the big Valentine's Day snow
2021.
in 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay,
That was when I skied through downtown Portland
yeah,
on
oh,
my
I
skis.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody needs to YouTube that, check it out. It's a great video. It lives legendary. It's like that in the Lisa Balick interview where
Yeah.
she's doing joggers.
Oh, poor Lisa Balick. She
Oh, I
gets that
know.
brought up every year
Yeah,
since that runner in the snow biffed it.
since it happened. I think that was 2012 when that video was
Oh.
shot. Yeah, I remember that. Ouch. Everybody was okay though, in
Yes.
full
Yes.
clarity. So I wanted to mention something about this. This Let me go back real quick to that 2021 Valentine's Day event. Notice I said big snowstorm. That was from about the Columbia River north into Clark County in 2021. That was a major ice storm in the Mid Willamette Valley, mid and northern Willamette
Yes.
Valley.
I remember that.
Yeah, but Silverton, Almsville,
Yes.
Malala Estacada.
So many trees downed,
Yeah,
homes, wrecked by
yeah,
fallen trees or power lines, people out of power for weeks. I believe
yep,
KOIN
yep,
even put up some of our coworkers in a hotel for longer because their
yeah,
homes didn't have power, even in the Portland metro. But yeah, you're right. It was a massive ice storm for
yep,
the Central Valley. But then into Southwest Washington, it was beautiful snow. And
yep,
Portland kind of got a mix of both. A lot of snow, but sheets of or layers of ice in there too.
That's the class. This is why I love forecasting right
Yeah.
here in the Portland Metro. I know you do too. It's, if we didn't have that little gap, that 5 mile wide gap called the Columbia River Gorge right through into Portland, it would be very hard pressed for Portland to get the kind of snow that we do because that's our tap to the really cold, dry continental air from the east and from Canada, and it funnels right down through. That was a classic scenario 2021 where the low came right up the coast and you had warm southerly flow up the valley, but it stopped it started transition right about Oregon City, Clackamas, and then it was more freezing rain and then snow to the north of that. And there it is. That was the 2021 2022 year. And you can see the La Ninas. I mean, you can pick out the La Nina years right in there.
Yeah. Oh
20.
boy. I
Yep.
remember that. So yeah, you're saying that kind of the mechanism for either a big icing event or snow event really has to be that frigid Arctic air coming through the gorge.
Yep.
It hits Portland, and then we get some low that comes in with the moisture.
Yep.
And there's always, with these low systems, that warmer tongue that comes up the valley
Yep.
from the south. And that can
Yep.
be that defining factor of whether or
Yep.
not we turn to ice. And, like you were saying, there's always that line somewhere in the Portland metro, somewhere
Yep.
south, that sees more ice because of the freezing rain profile and how the freezing rain sets up with the warm tongue and the layers of cold, it super freezes or super cools, and we can get that icing instead. So it really is such a tricky forecast for the winter, right in this region, just geographically,
Yeah.
with the yeah.
All about the track of the low too, the center of
Yes.
the low pressure. As air flows from high to low. So as that storm comes in, if it goes just south, the center of the low goes, say, to Eugene, to Bend, to Pendleton. Whole northern end of the valley is going to be probably snow.
Snow.
You get any kind of a southerly wind component, because remember, the ocean is on average about 55 degrees if you kind of look year round, maybe a little bit, but 53, I think, is the average year round. Boy, that's really warm air mass, maritime air mass. That's going to send the warm air in up above the cold air that's in place, and that's your freezing rain setup when the low goes slightly north of us. So it's fascinating to forecast in the Portland area, and I think it can be one of the most challenging places to forecast anywhere in the country
I agree.
because of all of these factors. I mean,
And
there's a
it
lot
seems
to
like
take into consideration.
it seems like Portland has gotten more icing. I mean, certainly in the last few decades, last 10 years even.
Yep.
I don't have any graphics up on that. We're specifically talking
Yep.
more about the snow, but do you have any kind of insight,
Yeah.
like what you're thinking about icing?
Uh, I think it's these borderline events that we get that are clearly going to be the icing setups because we get the cold air in here, but either we don't get any moisture in, we just kind of moderate out slowly. But when we do get the cold air in, it's all about that next system that comes in after the cold air is in place. Then the pattern changes. We get something in off the coast like a front, and they just happen to be trending a little further north. They
Hmm.
scour out the colder air from the gorge maybe a little quicker. But it's an interesting thought. I hadn't given that a whole lot of thought. The other
Hmm.
thing that I was thinking about was how we've transitioned into these. We didn't have February snows in Portland since I believe about February of '89. I'm sorry, February '95. So we're talking 31 years ago this February. All of a sudden we have this drought of no February snows until whenever that they started picking up again. I want to say maybe 2018, 19 or 17, 18. No, it was 2016, 17. I remember that 11.2 inch some. And now it's like we don't get it in December anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of pushing to later in the season.
Yeah, it is. And I don't have the answer for that either. It's all about the pattern that sets up and when it sets up. So, yeah, look at that right there.
Yeah, so we've got a fun event coming up on Saturday, October 18th. And Steve, you're a big part of this every single year.
Yeah,
It's with the Oregon AMS chapter that puts it
yeah.
on, and it is the Winter Weather Forecasting Conference. So we got a bunch of speakers that all
Geeks,
analyze
weather geeks.
recent snow data
Yes,
and give
yes.
their presentation and outlook for what they think. Got any words on that, Steve?
Oh, I got a lot. Number
Keep it
one.
short. We got like 1 minute left.
Oh, okay. We'll make it fast. You might see some TV people there
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yeah, come down this Saturday or whenever you're watching this. It
Mm-hmm.
will be Saturday, October 18th. If you see this after the fact, well, we hope we saw you there. It is free, 10 a.m. We give away a Davis weather station, which is really cool. And yeah, four meteorologists, including the National Weather Service, will give their outlooks for the upcoming winter, kind of specific to Portland, Western Oregon, and Southwest Washington. So lots of fun stuff. Couple hundred people there.
Yeah.
Every year.
I go every year, and there have been some big numbers. It's my goal to win that Davis weather station too. I need one on top of my roof, so I'm gonna
Me
put
too. Me
in.
too. We'll put another one at the Coin Tower.
Yeah. Okay. Before we leave, Steve, what is your prediction for the amount of snow in Portland that you think we'll get this year?
I'm going to do two things. The first snowflake will fly on December 1st. That's my guess because we do that every year at this
Okay.
conference.
Wait.
And I
So
think,
not collecting on the ground, but just flying in the air.
yeah, the ASOS, the automated system has to say SN or
Okay.
minus SN. So it's just
Okay.
got to see it in the air. I'm going to pick that El Nino average. Even though it's not an El Nino, I'm gonna go 3.5 inches
Yeah.
in one storm. I would be surprised if we get out of this La Nina with no snow.
Okay. So lower end of an average La Nina winter, safe
Yep.
bet. I kind of agree with you. I'm going to stick with a February event, maybe 2 inches. And that's
Okay.
that's all this year.
Well, we're gonna see. And where's my coin mug? If you win, you get a coin six watching out for you mug
Okay. And if
and
you
my
win,
chain.
you can have my phone. Okay. So
Nice. Did you say your phone?
yeah, take it from me.
Hey, hey, I like my Android. I like my
Yeah,
Android.
you're not an team iPhone guy.
I'm
Um,
working on it. I'm working on it.
all right, that was an awesome chat. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
letting me
you
pick your
bet.
brain about all the winter weather we've had and
Yep.
giving us your outlook for this year. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and you can catch both of us on Coin Six News. But we'll see you around this winter.